In this heartfelt and inspiring episode, the Young Outcasts welcome Emily Sjoberg, a Venture for America fellow who openly discusses her experience with alcohol and social anxiety. Emily shares her story from early college days, where she first encountered drinking, to becoming socially anxious. She elucidates on her journey of self realization, accepting the issue, and the decision to quit drinking. Emily highlights how alcohol was perceived both as a social connector and later a habit. Through the help of her supportive friends and her commitment to change, Emily successfully navigates herself from the struggle and explains the benefit she has reaped from her newfound sobriety and her perspective on maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Hello, everyone. We are so happy, excited, thrilled to have Emily Sjoberg on our podcast. And we are super happy to have this conversation. She's one of the most sparkling and and I don't have any adjective. Please, Lohan, intervene with
All
some
right,
adjectives.
let me
for
just
Emily.
take over here. So
No, I think it's
Hi,
fine.
No, thank you for calling me sparkling.
You could have just said some adjectives.
That
You
means
could
a
start in
lot.
a less serious way than other things. Like just throw an adjective and like
I think we
no.
okay
You want
for
to
the
make
first just 5 seconds. We just need to do the introduction to be serious. Okay, so let me do it real quick, and then you can
okay.
think of
Okay.
an adjective while I'm doing it. So that way we got
Okay.
that. Okay. All right. Welcome everyone to the Young Outcasts podcast. We got me, Rohan, and our co-host Davide, and our awesome guest Emily Sjoberg, a dear friend of ours and also a VFA fellow. And yeah, I'm really excited to have her on the podcast. Davide.
I'm super happy to have Emily. She's one of the most sparkling person I know. So I'm happy to let her explain her journey. So
Yeah,
Emily,
thanks for letting me sparkle and shine on the podcast. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, absolutely. So, as mentioned, my name is Emily Sjoberg, and I have been sober for over 9 months. So my story is really, thank you, thank you. My story is about my relationship with alcohol and social anxiety, especially how the two were interconnected within my life. So, growing up, I was a shy, reserved kiddo with social anxiety tendencies. And starting around the good old middle school days, that's when I started to try to find different methods to escape, whether it was perfectionism or media consumption or general avoidance of social situations. So, throughout my small town high school experience, I was so excited for college because it felt like the ultimate opportunity to escape. And of course, I wanted to live out the infamous college party lifestyle that's painted by the media. So, actually, freshman year of college was the first time I started drinking. And very quickly, it became a normal part of my weekend routine. It felt like for one of the first times in my life, it was actually easy for me to make friends. And I attributed that to my alcohol consumption. My closest circle of friends would base most of our activities around drinking. And I always just laughed it off and blamed it on the fact that we were just college kids. And things started off what I would describe at the time as being fairly normal. I'd only drink on weekends or the occasional weekday. I very rarely puked. Woohoo! However, during my second year of college, I started to notice more problems. It was getting more normal for me to black out during social settings. I would sometimes drink alone. And I also started to justify having a couple of drinks before a presentation or virtual interview. And so, after some feelings of guilt and some heart to heart conversations with close friends, I was able to cut out drinking before presentations. However, issues still remained. And quite honestly, it was during my Venture for America training camp in 2022 that I really started to reflect on my relationship with alcohol. And I'm sure a lot of the fellows who are listening know there are lots of alcohol focused activities. And boy, oh boy, I love to participate. Um, there were 2 nights of training camp that I partially blacked out. And I was very embarrassed, and I felt like I no longer had the excuse of being a college kid because I wasn't a college kid. And I really recognized for the first time that I was using alcohol as a crutch to my social anxiety. So after training camp, I took a month off of using alcohol. But once the month was up, the habits seemed to creep back in. And I also started to experience a lot of anxiety, if you will, where I'd wake up in the morning with a very fast heartbeat and just like lots of regret from the night before. So basically, as the new year of 2023 approached, I decided that it was finally time for me to be sober for a year. And it was really an amazing decision. So on December 19th of 2022, that was the day I started my sobriety. I wrote down that the reason I wanted to do that was just so I could be more confident with who I am substance free. And of course, it's all a journey and it's definitely not always linear. But 9 months later, I can say that I'm so proud of where I'm headed. I love who I am sober. I'm more confident, fun to be around, creative, and just generally happy, which is the best. So, for me personally, reflecting and shifting my relationship with alcohol was really a key to navigating my relationship with myself. So, that's an overview of my fall and rise up to this point.
Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing that. It was very linear, very transparent, very open. So we'd appreciate you bringing us all the story on the table, and like knowing you, like getting to know you better in the last months. I feel like that there was some very high confidence moment. I know together we kind of did the challenge to pitch a startup on stage, and you were our main presenter, and uh, and like you were probably the person that was like helping me and Rohan to manage the confidence and anxiety before the like we jumped on stage, and also like you did an amazing credo. That is a speech at reunion of 100 plus fellows um, in Detroit this summer. So I feel like that you should also celebrate your wins um, after this kind of alcohol related success.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Redux was really such a beautiful moment for me in particular because I mean, it was around what, like the 7 month mark of my sobriety, and being able to reflect on the year before at training camp and what I went through during that, and really being able to enter it this time feeling like I had really like awesome relationships with other fellows, and it was great to work on a team with the both of you, and also just feel more confident in being able to go on stage and share my journey with others was really special. So thank you for mentioning that.
And for clarity of the audience, can you like briefly explain us what is training camp, what is Redux, and also how do you feel yourself changed between training camp and Redux? So it's a way I feel like to picture two key moments, the fall and the rise moment of your journey.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the three of us were in this program called Venture for America, which is a competitive 2 year program for recent college graduates who are interested in entrepreneurship and social impact. And so it pairs these people up with startup companies or innovation focused companies as a way to really start young grads having meaning in their career. So, with that being said, the program offers lots of training and resources, a main one being the 2 week training camp experience. So, for our class, the class of 2022, we had our training camp in August of 2022. I think that's correct.
I think July, yeah.
So, it was Oh,
Not July, yeah.
July of 2022. So we had different training across like all areas of business, such as pitching and marketing, prototyping, you name it. We learned it there. And there were opportunities for people in the fellowship to give credos and like form teams and really like build really meaningful relationships. So it was a really awesome start to the fellowship program,
I
like to be able to connect with people.
really quick want to interject. Sorry to interrupt. But yeah, Credo
Yeah,
is
thanks.
basically it's like the 5 parts of the mission statement of Venture for America, and essentially, they're kind of like what uh, symbolize kind of the kind of ideology that Venture for America was created around, and you're given these opportunities at training camp before and after programming to give like a 2 to 5 minute speech about how your life relates to one of those credos or those mission statements that Venture for America has. So just to provide a little bit of the context for people who aren't familiar with Venture for America.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, that's kind of a brief overview of training camp, and then another part of programming for Venture for America. 1 year into the program, so this was July of 2023 for us. There's Redux programming, which is kind of like a mini version of training camp, is what I'd say. When there's definitely still training and stuff, but just on a shorter level. But just giving fellows another opportunity to connect and come together and also really reflect over the past year of what we've been through and set goals for the future. And then another part of that as well was the side project-a-thon or SPAT. So I worked with Davide and Rohan on a side project of sorts and presented it to the incoming class of fellows, which was a very special moment. But yeah, basically my experience with both of them, um, like heading to training camp, I was definitely excited and nervous and all the feelings because I recently accepted a full-time job through the fellowship program. And so I feel like that was very top of mind for me. Um, I felt like myself going into training camp. I studied advertising in college. I was not a business major. I was in the School of Communications. So I can write like a really good press release, but I really was not trained kind of on business planning and that side of things. So training camp was a really eye-opening experience. And even though I interned at a startup in the past, I just learned so much about the space as a whole. So that was awesome. But yeah, at that time in my life, accepting my new job and everything, I was just definitely going through a lot of stress and just approaching the real world of sorts that people always talk about in college. It felt like it was really happening. So I just remember like coming into training camp, I was just like, I want to make friends with everyone. I want everyone to like me, and I just want to be the coolest person there. And so I think a part of that too, like it really was like I made so many great friends from training camp, and I'm so grateful for that. Um, but I also felt a lot of internal pressure to go out every weekday night, and be the life of the party and make these memories. And also just feeling like, oh, like, what if this is the last moment of my life when I have this like college like experience? And so trying to really like dive in on that. And so yeah, I would go out a lot of the nights, and like I mentioned, partially black out a couple of the nights as well. Um, and I was, like I mentioned, I was embarrassed about it. And a lot of that was me thinking, I'm like, I just met these people like a few days ago. Why am I doing this? Like, where's this motivation coming from? And of course, too, just feeling like I can't blame it on me being this young, silly college student. Like, I think it's interesting how relationship with alcohol still gets that rep for college as well. And I think it's something that people are just more recognizing, that just because it is portrayed in media or like the normal thing to do, it's important just to reflect on habits and behaviors. Um, but yeah, all that being said, I made really good friends, but I also put myself in a situation that allowed for deep self reflection for the months ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Emily, I really wanted to say, thank you so much for sharing. First of all, your story and kind of emphasizing these last couple points as well, like specifically training camp and how you felt about that and how that kind of drove some thought into you about like I want to be more conscious about my choices around alcohol. And I think like first off, I want to say like that's very common. I would say like a lot of people have faced that relationship with alcohol. I know in my life experience, I have a very similar relationship with alcohol as you. I didn't start drinking till I came to college, and I feel like when you get to college, you're introduced to all of these like habits that come out of like people being in the college environment. I don't really know how what it is, but maybe it's just like the youth and the like inexperience. But like when you get to college, you're finally away from your parents and you have that independence, and so these
Yeah.
these like things kind of creep in. Everybody else is doing it, why not? It's like the best way to socialize. Whatever justification you give for yourself to go start drinking alcohol, you go into it, and then you just kind of like it's kind of like the way adults socialize. That's the way I rationalized it with myself. um and yeah, like I felt the same way. Like I feel like I noticed very early, probably after a semester of me drinking, like my freshman year, I started realizing my second semester freshman year how that was affecting not only my academic success but like my relationships with my friends. I felt that anxiety was creeping up on me way more than like I was used to in high school. I think I didn't drink any coffee even, so like I had zero like um, outside drugs or any sort of like influence from that perspective. I was pretty like I was sober and I was also not drinking caffeine. So I think those are the two big things that caused me anxiety in college. Like I started really needing caffeine to be honest because I was studying an engineering degree. I feel like I justified that, but nowadays I'm like thinking back, I'm like maybe I could have done it if I didn't drink. I didn't drink all night. If I didn't drink on the weekends and then have to like lose that time that I could have spent studying that I would have to use during the week, and like all of this kind of compounds together. But just like the physical effects of caffeine and alcohol on your body will cause anxiety, right? It's meant to, those drugs are meant to affect your mental state and your physical state. So, yeah, like the way I used to think about that freshman year, second semester, I started changing my habits, trying to adjust that. But I feel like always the alcohol always crept back in, and something that like I definitely have been like reflecting on the past couple of years is like trying to like moderate my alcohol usage and my alcohol consumption. And yeah, I'm really excited to like dig into that in the rest of this podcast, like figure out how your journey of like through sobriety has affected all of your anxiety. And clearly it seems like the rise is on the way, and you've been continuing to rise with the presentation. I want to reiterate, like based on what Davide was saying, you are the life of the party, so to speak, during our presentation and during that week when we were doing that project together and working on um, mix and match, which at some point maybe it will be on the market, so you guys need to watch out for that. But yeah, I mean, you were the life of the presentation. You were the clown, the main person on the stage, really talking for us and really leading the charge. David and I were just the followers, the founders, but you're the one who the voice of our presentation. So
I'd say we were all stars. But Rohan, thank you so much for sharing your kind of journey and relationship with alcohol as well. That's very insightful. And I think, like you said, a lot of people do have similar experiences. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in more to mine.
I have like a question that it stood out from your words and from your experience. Um, you said at a certain point like fear of missing out. So and then at the very beginning you mentioned like social anxiety. So how there is the connection between like FOMO, social anxiety, and alcohol? Which one is at the end like the real driver?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, of course, it varies from person to person, but from my experience, um, I noticed, especially at training camp, and now just looking back to my experiences drinking, a large reason why I would be drawn to alcohol was just this concept that I'm like, it was more subconscious, but just the idea that the people around me would think I was funnier, would think I was just more carefree and just overall fun to be around if I had a few drinks in me, and that I was more likely to just be able to make friends and talk to people more easily with alcohol, like in my body. And I think that belief, of course, creates a cycle of intensified anxiety because it's kind of reinforcing this idea. I'm like, oh, if I keep making friends because of alcohol, it reinforces this idea that maybe it's just harder for me to make friends without. Maybe people don't like me as much when I'm sober. Um, and just this cycle of like, oh, I'll have a drink, I'll be friendlier, people will like me more. And I think that's definitely just a dangerous cycle to be in.
And like you develop this self-belief because the others were telling you that you were better with alcohol, or because it's something that you start to say to yourself?
Yeah, it was definitely something I was saying to myself. I personally just had a bit of trouble having close friendships in middle school and high school, and so I didn't drink during those times. So once I entered college and I was like, oh, there's all these new people, I was far away from home, which was exciting to me because I'm like, people from my home, they won't remember me. I'm a whole new person. And I'm a drinker. So people like me now. So it was definitely an internal idea and not a true idea. But I was associating my drinking with my ability to make new friends.
Okay. And yeah, Rohan, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's a combination of all of them too, right? Like, they all compound on each other. Those reasons, those things, essentially saying that, like, I want people to like me also comes from like, oh, like I have this anxiety within me, and drinking the alcohol removes that anxiety temporarily, which then means that like I'm more likable. So then it's easy for you to just associate drinking with making friends. And then that positive association will start to build that habit. It's like, oh, I have this craving for, connections and developing relationships with my friends. And, you know, alcohol can kind of like drive that craving to actually be reality, right? Like if you drink with other people, you feel like you have developed a connection or relationship with other people, when in reality, you can be, but also I think it's more likely to just be something that's a feedback loop from you having anxiety already, right? Dealing with that problem, addressing the root cause of the anxiety is a more healthier way to resolve that temporary release from anxiety that you get from just drinking alcohol, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'm curious, like in your college time, have you experienced some nights that you were sober? And like, which was the difference between like your sober nights and the nights where you had alcohol in your body?
Um, I'd say the difference. Um, Definitely looking back at college, it's like most of my weekends, there was at least one night where I was drinking alcohol. So, in a way, it's even hard for me to kind of compare because it was becoming such a routine and pattern in my life. But of course, there were times when I was sober. And I think looking back, over time having the use of alcohol, because at first I was like, oh, this is making me less anxious. This is making me have more friends. But over the time in college, then as my body regulates and tries to make up for like the depressant of the alcohol and kind of adding more cortisol and just more stress in my life, over time there definitely was just increased anxiety in my day-to-day life as well. Even if I wasn't drinking all the time, I think there was some sort of like just mindset change going on where dependence in a way, where I felt like more comfortable in social settings when I did have alcohol with me.
Okay.
So I think like one of the things that I really curious about is that like when you were first going through that I guess like mindset shift, between like drinking alcohol before presentations and then kind of having those close conversations with friends, like how did that kind of mindset shift come out from that, and like how did your friends approach you with that, realizing that you had a problem, or you realizing that you had a problem? Can you kind of like break that down a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I mentioned as I was kind of explaining my story, I feel like me drinking before presentations and interviews, that really was when I recognized that this is a problematic use of alcohol, and something that I felt guilty about, I felt shameful about. And for a while, of course, like I hid it from my friends and family. And it just wasn't something I was proud of. So I kept it within me for a bit. And so I would like secretly, quite honestly, like go to my closet and take a couple of shots before an interview. But every time, like internally, it didn't feel great because it felt like this big secret, and secrets aren't fun. um, so after a few months and really working on it, like just a little bit more internally, I did approach my best friend, um, and just told her what I was going through. Um, and just taking the step of being able to admit it to someone else and really vocalize it like that, since it was just difficult to say out loud, that was definitely a moment for me where it's like, now that I've said it out loud, I need to figure out a way to make a change, because um, being able to see it from other people's perspective a bit more, it was still just something I wasn't proud of and something I really wanted to put in work to. So she was super supportive. I'm really lucky in my life to just have really supportive friends throughout this journey, but supportive in the way where she was able to also say, like, this isn't a healthy use of alcohol, and you should try to look into alternative methods, and being very kind about it, but also being honest with me and telling me what I needed to hear. Um, so it's not like everything changed that instance and I never drank again. As you know from the story, that's not the case. And I'm pretty sure after that I still did drink before a few presentations or interviews. But over time and really like using that as a catalyst of sorts, just being able to make the conscious effort and recognize this is something I'm not proud of. This is something I don't want to share with other people. So it is a change I need to make in my life. And change is hard to make once things become habit. But it's possible. But I also learned over time that even though the place where I was coming from, it was more like the drinking by myself, the drinking before interviews. That was really where the shame was coming from. And I still justified, oh, it's social party time. Like, of course I'm going to drink. Everyone here is drinking. So that still felt okay for a bit. But it's interesting because if I didn't have the like little closet of shame moment of sorts of the more like individual level drinking, I probably wouldn't have got to a point of really reflecting on my social drinking, at least in the way that I have.
Uh, Thank you so much for diving deep on this point, Emily, about like this relationship of starting to drink alcohol in a more extensive way, even before interviews and presentations. I don't have a clear relationship with alcohol because it really varies throughout times, and now I also don't drink anymore because of other reasons that I can explain later if you want, guys. But my question is like I always perceive alcohol as an element that makes you be more chill, more irrational, makes you forget about like social norms, so you can like be a bit more open, an extrovert. And so, why did you perceive that drinking alcohol could help you in interviews? Were you not scared that your mind could be confused and blurry, and your thoughts being blurry during the interview?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think um, one of the first times I did it, it was during a time when I was applying to lots of internships and getting lots of rejections. And during that time, since I already had this existing belief from my relationship with alcohol from beforehand in social settings, that was like, oh, if I drink a little, maybe people will like me more. That was a thought that was still kind of stirring along in my brain. So even though I definitely approached it with shame from the beginning, it wasn't something that like I wanted to tell my parents about. Um, After rejection, I was like, maybe if I try this out, because I personally, I used to get very, very anxious prior to job interviews and kind of more like one on one communication with job possibilities like that. And so I felt like for myself, because of my interview anxiety, it would kind of manifest itself during the interview with a shakiness of my voice and just like visible anxiety. And it's weird to say, but it's like my anxiety was coming from being seen as anxious. So I justified it in a way where if I have alcohol, I'll like release my inhibitions a bit. And even if I stumble over my words a little bit or don't get a point very clear across, at that point it didn't matter to me because I'm just like, my main priority, I don't want to look as anxious. Um, and yeah, I really don't think that's a good reason to use alcohol. So that continued a cycle of shame for myself with using alcohol because I think then I was starting to realize this isn't coming from a place of um, more like connecting with friends and just a place of having more fun, but really a place of like not being proud of who I was and leaning on substances to try to change that.
I can really thank you so much for sharing that, and I can really relate to that. I feel like on a I think we've talked about this before, but I can really empathize with that. I felt that like I think it's like kind of like a snowball effect, like I was talking about before. How like I wasn't doing well on exams or school sometimes. I felt like my major was really difficult, so I was struggling a lot with keeping up with homework or my coursework in general. And so, to relieve that stress from me not performing up to my own expectations, I would start to drink with my friends on the weekends or, whenever there was a social event happening. And then that caused me to already be like, I was already behind on some coursework. And then I, wake up with a hangover, wake up, doing all these things. I'm behind on coursework again. You know what I mean? Like I can't even use the weekend to catch up on some of my coursework or my exam work. So then that kind of fed into, okay, I'm stressed about not performing well, so then I'm going to drink and then I'm going to get anxiety from drinking, and then continue to have anxiety because I didn't do well on my exam work. So then it just keeps spiraling and spiraling into, you know, the fall, to so to speak, to put it in terms of our podcast. And then one of the other things I was saying was like, you know, I've related to you on this in the past as well, like having that anxiety. I think this is something that I've had my entire life. For some reason, I like don't really struggle with having conversations with people, or like being in a group setting, or you know, having one-on-one conversations with friends. But where I've really struggled with anxiety my entire life, even before I went to college and started, you know, drinking coffee and alcohol, was just public speaking. I don't know why. I just have like a really bad fear of public speaking from a childhood, from a young age. I think, like, you know, sometimes people just made fun of me, and then I just never got that confidence to be able to go up on a stage and feel really comfortable speaking. And then that kind of fed into me also putting pressure on myself because I wasn't doing well in my coursework, to try to get the best internships or the best jobs, the best engineering positions in companies. So I would go into that interview just completely putting all that pressure on myself to, like, I need to do well on this interview. I need to do well on this to be able to like score this internship, get to the next round. My friends have internships. I need to have a good internship. So kind of putting that self pressure on myself. And yeah, like, you know, feeling the need to like loosen up, right? Like, oh, it's okay if it's only one shot. I think, you know, if I take that one shot before the interview, I'll be able to just be so much more loose and comfortable, and be able to speak to the interviewer without having that like pressure on myself. And it happened to me once or twice, and I just took a look at myself and I said, like, this is not the path I want to go down. I think needing a dependency on alcohol to do any public speaking or to do any interviews. After I did it once or twice, I realized that that's just not who I want to be. I would rather miss out on those internships. I would rather miss out on being the president of this club, than, you know, allow myself to drink when I'm not in a social setting. And I think that, you know, that's a very common thing that a lot of college students probably face, right? Like, you know, when you have this much pressure from school or from parents or from your friends doing well, right? Like, I think allowing yourself to go to alcohol to be able to reduce that, what you think is reducing your anxiety, is actually really increasing it, doubling it, tripling it, right? So like that entire like thought process was always going through my head when I was when I had this relationship with alcohol, right? Saying, okay, I'm gonna just drink, I'm gonna be able to get this internship, and then I'll be able to, like, you know, never have to worry about it. But then it's like, you know, what if I have a big presentation at work? Am I just gonna show up to work drunk? Like, am I just gonna show up to the big moments in my life drunk? Like, obviously not, right? This is not something I'd want to do. So, um, yeah, it's something that I've constantly been working on and thinking about. There's even moments like, I know some of my college friends will be watching this podcast, and there's some moments where I know that they know that I was doing some. I was trying to like do a lot of funny stuff. Like, I was saying, oh, I'm gonna only drink like 5 times this semester, and then like I broke that rule in like a week. So like I was like, oh, you know, it's like senior year, second semester, and I remember like clearly being like, hey, I'm gonna try to only drink 5 times in the year of 2021. And then like this is like February. I'm like, oh, I only had like, you know, one time I drank this month or something. And then like all of a sudden it was like, you know, 2 weekends in a row and I already drank like 5 nights. So it's like I already broke that. So it is difficult to kind of like set yourself on those like good habits, and I guess trying to figure out a way to deal with the anxiety that comes with um, speaking to people. I feel like just connecting with people, whatever it is, whatever problem you've had, trying to deal with it with alcohol, in my personal opinion, has not worked. So if you're someone who has been able to manage with that, I mean, that's impressive. But at some day, you're gonna have to pay the piper, right? And that was my thought process.
Yeah, no, I felt very similar where it's like the first time I did it, it's like, oh, like this is a one-time thing, easy. And then as it kept going and I kept repeating it, it's when when does it go to the work presentation? Like when does it go to just getting out of bed in the morning. Like, it becomes a very slippery slope, and I saw it in my own life, taking it already, like, the questionable relationship I had with it from more social settings and kind of tying my worth to it that way, and then transferring it over to doing it on a personal level. It's definitely scary because it's like, where will it go next? So yeah, I was definitely fortunate, like I said, to reach out to my best friend, and have these conversations early on and kind of like have a plan for myself early on, because I didn't want to get to the point where I was waking up and it would be the first thing I do, and then I'd have to go to sleep and like have a drink to do that. Yeah, already where I was at, like, I was very shameful with what it looked like at that point. So it definitely was worrisome, like where it could be headed.
And like while you were talking, I mean, your this conversation is bringing up to me some memories, and so you were saying about like alcohol as a social connector, and it's pretty funny because I and also an habit. So it becomes from a social connector to an habit. And so on the habit perspective, I never had alcohol as a habit, and I want to say why. It was my actually was something I was kind of, how to say. Let me start from scratch. I want to put these two things together. Um, Emily, I really relate to what you said because I think you mentioned that like alcohol is both a social connector, and then it starts to get into your life as a habit. And so on the habit side, um, I can relate, but I think lots of people can relate that once starting to use some substances as habit, and could be also like the simple coffee, and you start like to have it like when you wake up, and then like after breakfast, and then like a bit later in the morning when you are starting to feel like again the peak of tiredness. And so like for example when I was studying, I like my big actually when I went to the US, I had my big bottle of cold brew that I was getting for free in my residence because they had a free coffee machine. And so my roommate, that it was pretty healthy, said like, David, like, what the fuck are you doing? You're not drinking water anymore. You're just drinking like coffee instead of water. And so I really agree about like people. It's very helpful to have people from the external that are kind of making you notice some stuff that, like for you becomes an habit. You don't even realize it because I mean when you say alcohol, you say, oh okay, it's alcohol, like, or okay, it's drugs. Like for example, coffee or tea or Red Bull, they sound like so innocent because they are kind of apparently not bad, but then like on long term, if you use something consistently, like it becomes really to be like very painful. And so for example, like now I brought to US Italian coffee machine, and I started to prepare like 3-4 espresso for myself, and it hits a lot my anxiety mode because now that I lowered the status of coffee in my blood, the level of coffee in my blood, like now that I'm again spiking it, it it brings very strong sensation. So that's on the habit side. Like I feel it's super cool, like to realize that you start to get dependent on some substances. For example, like I started to drink kombucha a few months ago, and I was getting like 1 or 2 bottles of kombucha per day, the little ones, of course. But yeah, I was first of all like $5 per bottle. Like I was spending $10 on kombucha per day because it was believed to be like cool and good for my gut and everything. And also like I started to be dependent on it. Plus, everyone is drinking kombucha. They know like there is a little bit of alcohol, so still it's not great. So that's kind of my story about habits. On the social connection side, it's very funny because alcohol was always for me like a social disconnector in the sense that like, and that's something that I kind of put in a drawer in a wardrobe, and now I'm getting back to it. Basically, when I was in high school, I was probably the only person that didn't want to drink. I mean, that time I was pretty, like, I had pretty strict parents, and also I was pretty strict myself, and so I really felt that alcohol was not like the right thing to drink for me. And so I had lots of friends that, like, when I was like like in high school, they were like going out to drink alcohol, even if it was illegal, because we were like 16, 17, and to drink in Italy you can drink at 18. And so, like, I was really, really avoiding it. And so I was starting, like, to not go out with the others were like excluding me because I wasn't, like, not as cool, because I mean, also, like, drinking alcohol is like a way to be cool. And I didn't care to be cool, because I felt that, like, my friends would still remain my friends. And instead, like, the fact that I was not getting to, like, the binary where everyone were, so I was kind of a bit off track. It started to bring me more and more loneliness, because I was excluded basically by a lot of social events. And that's, I mean, of course, alcohol was not the only reason, but I think was a component of that, a major component of that. And I mean, and the overall thing of not be seen as cool as the brave person that tries new things. And so that's probably one of the main reason why I started to, like, this exclusion feeling, because I was not, like, joining the activities that other young people were doing, brought me, like, to say, okay, the city where I was born, it was Naples, is not really my context. And so after high school, I immediately moved somewhere else. And then after that, I started to ping pong, like, from Milan to China, and now I'm in the US. So, like, I agree about the habits, and then, like, with alcohol, I always battled a bit, because for me it was a social disconnector. So I agree, like, to get to be cool and socialize, in, unfortunately, at least in the ages where we grow up, in the historical moment when we grew up, probably also now, it's something that is perceived as cool, and as, like, one of the core activities that you need to do. And if you don't do it, you're kind of out of the coolness. So yeah.
I know you said you had like a really good support system around you, and your friends were willing to kind of help you through that journey when you were talking to them. Um, did you feel like there was any other like outside resources, or like I don't know, maybe books, podcasts, outside resources besides your like close family and friends who are able to support you? Because I know a lot of people who may be watching, maybe surrounded by people who in their lives who may be enabling this behavior, and like you want someone who doesn't have that kind of support system around them. What can they do to like start thinking about being more mindful about their decisions with not only alcohol but any substance abuse, right?
Yeah, definitely. Something I read early on in the year, and this one is more so aimed toward alcohol use, and also kind of specifically more so for women. But it's called Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. And it really goes through her experience quitting alcohol, and also explaining how kind of the normal processes of handling alcohol abuse, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, they were initially framed with white men in mind. So personally, and I don't look down upon people who do AA at all, but for my personal journey, I haven't really dived into that side yet. I've done kind of the more internal process, and then books, reaching out to my support system. But this book in particular was helpful for me because it definitely covered kind of how habits play into life, just like how you were explaining it, Rohan. But also just keeping in mind it feels very easy to like, well, it doesn't feel easy to take alcohol out of your life, because then
It's easy to say that
for
you're going to
people
do
in
it.
my similar, yeah, people in my similar situation, then it feels like this hole. So actually her suggestion is like forming new behaviors and patterns, healthier behaviors and patterns, so that you'll still have the cue, like you said, of something coming up that wants to spark some sort of behavior, but you'll have healthier habits and routines to lean back on. And in general, it was just a resource for me to feel less alone early on in my journey. And one of my favorite parts of the books is she goes on to explain, like, sobriety, it shouldn't feel like a punishment. It should feel freeing. And for me, I think at first it just feels different, and there's a bit of a learning curve, and just change is scary. And it's not just the easiest to go sober, but being able to like have this mindset shift where it's actually providing opportunity. There are so many perks, like waking up not hungover. That's awesome. Like my weekend mornings are just so much easier. And life in general, there's so many kind of healing methods and techniques. Like you can try meditation and yoga, taking care of your physical health more, going to weird, like, hippy dippy festival type things. Like, there are so many ways to kind of explore yourself through healing. So, even for people who don't consider themselves having problematic habits of drinking, I feel like a lot of us, at some point in our life, there is a healing journey of sorts. And being able to approach it with this curiosity and excitement, and yeah, beyond the alcohol, there's just opportunity for healing, which is beautiful. And so I'm still definitely on that journey as well.
You said two keywords, I think, like you said like healing. That I think there is a whole word to explore with this word, but also the word punishment. For example, like not eating a donut, not eating fry food. I For me, like all these things were my satisfaction when I was in a previous life, and were like my moment of happiness in the week where I was eating something that was fulfilling my taste. And when I was feeling like full, like I love to eat, because in Italy there is this huge culture of eating food, eating carbs. In Naples, like we fry everything. That's what we say, and so the thing is, when I started my healthy journey, I realized that me not anymore, like I don't know, eating fried food, or trying to reduce drastically the amount of sweet things I put in my body. It's not a punishment, but it's a witness of self-love. Like every time I'm able to drop these things, like for example, I had 2 weeks ago a pretty low moment. I was like feeling like a bit sad, and I don't know, sometimes you lose the focus of things. And so me going to a restaurant and ordering fries, for me was very, very a sad moment, because I knew I was harming myself. And of course, you need sometimes, like, it's called pleasure food. How is it called? Um, Please, English
Comfort
speakers.
food.
Comfort food, yeah, comfort food. But yeah, I was punishing myself, and I mean now I'm a bit exaggerating myself, but it is what it is. I was actually with Rohan in Miami, and I was like, like I had half a cocktail in front of me, uh, that I stole from the cocktail from the main bottle of the group, and I was, for by mistake, I ordered like a mixed appetizer and realized everything was fried, and I was feeling so bad while I was eating it. I was like having some anxiety. I was thinking, okay, like how much weight will I gain? How much, uh, like how shitty substances I'm introducing to my body, because I knew also was not high quality fried food. I mean, if I'm eating calamari, squids in Italy are fried, I mean, I'm super happy about that. Of course, in a used amount, but like eating that bad food, fried in Miami, was really. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it was like taking a knife and putting it on my stomach, and like giving to my body like bad legacy for 1 or 2 days. And so I I feel like being stricter to yourself, like also going to gym like every day. When I started to do that, for me was a punishment. Like for me was a way to reduce my shame. And maybe also like for you, Emily, like quitting alcohol at the beginning was like for your way to reduce the shame. But then after a while, it starts a way to cultivate your self love and really understand like the ideal status that like you don't need anything else. I try to say to myself like I don't even need I in the ideal world I don't even need friends. I don't even need a partner to be really happy. Like if I'm able to stay 1 week in or for a month in as a Buddha in a monastery, like alone, that's where I'm in the right place to be in a couple, to be with friends. That's maybe an extreme thought, but I feel you should first of all being having your internal focus, having your internal balance, and then you can transfer the balance in all your relationships and make them healthy. Like you cannot have anything surrounding yourself healthy if you're not inside yourself healthy. And one of the main steps, as Emily was saying, is like to develop good habits and get rid of any dependency because you are complete with yourself. You are a one. And when you feel that you need something else to become a one, that's when I feel like you lose your internal balance because you depend on something to be able to get balanced and to get through your day. For example, a coffee. If it's like something comfort, it's fine. But if it starts to become part of your identity, that's something that can really like be dependent, make you feel dependent and not
Yeah,
self
it's
balanced.
negatively affecting your long-term health and your the relationships around you. Um, and like, yeah, I think both of the conversations that you guys have brought up kind of segue perfectly into the rise. So I kind of wanted to ask a question about that. What were some of the immediate challenges you faced when you first made that commitment last December to go sober? Like, what were the, I guess, 1 month, or I guess 1 week, 1 month, and 3 months? Like, how are you feeling at those stages? And what were some challenges? What were some things going on in your life that, started to maybe creep in, thoughts that you might want to go back to alcohol?
Yeah, definitely. For my own experience, I wasn't at a point where I was using alcohol like every day or super consistently, so I myself didn't notice like physical cravings as much or that side, but there's still definitely a journey based on the social interactions, especially that I was going through, because definitely the first party social interaction where everyone around me was drinking. I just remember showing up and it's like, I I would like a drink right now. I'm not going to because I made a promise to myself. um, but it was a thing where I still felt I'm like, I would be a bit more comfortable right now if I did have a drink. So I think having that first situation. Also, this was kind of an interesting realization on my part, but I went to some sort of networking event. So I wasn't like super close to these people, but it was like a more professional setting. And they had kind of an open bar type situation there. And it made me think it's like, whoa, lots of professional happy hour situations like this, it's also really based around drinking. And when these people aren't my friends, they're my weird professional colleague people, I was also like, I'd kind of like a drink right now. I'm not going to. But this would definitely be a situation where before, like a few months ago, it would have just been so much easier for me to go up to the bar, have a drink, and then be like, okay, I don't know these people super well, and I have to act so professional and cool. And it's just been interesting to realize how prevalent drinking is in more professional situations as well, like in US society at least. So all that being said, it's like what sticks out in my mind was kind of like the first experience. Like, this is my first party with friends. This is my first networking happy hour thing where I'm not drinking. This is my first house party that I'm actually throwing at my apartment with my roommates. And before I would have been drinking, but now I'm hosting and keeping everyone happy, and that's fun in its own way as well. But anyway, early social situations like that was kind of like key moments for me of recognizing how I would navigate social situations, what was really the motivation. And a lot of that, as we discussed, was just coming from a place of social anxiety tendencies and just feeling like there was kind of a disconnect with me connecting with people without alcohol. And then third, the whole early on experience actually helped me realize what are situations that I actually enjoy being in versus what are situations where it's like, oh, this is just what my friends are doing and there's alcohol here, so it's bearable. But when I go into those situations sober, it's more like, this actually isn't how I want to be spending my time. Maybe these aren't the right people that I do want to connect with and have more meaningful conversations with. So, also, just by kind of going on my sober journey, it helps me realize more what I actually want to spend my time doing, which is super cool.
And I'm curious about like some habits that allowed yourself to really get free of the alcohol in your party time and your solo time, or also like some drivers that really convinced to keep yourself accountable. Because for example, like Rohan before was saying, okay, was saying to his friends, I'm not gonna drink for the next 3 weekends, but then at the end he told us that he was keep drinking. And I think it's pretty rare like to something and to stick to it. So is it more a matter of like saying to yourself some powerful things in your brain, or more action, and so start to have better routines?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I definitely implemented new habits or like routines to kind of get me through the whole process and like through the cue routine reward loop of sorts. I feel like, well, as far as interviews go, it's like now I have this whole new set routine of not drinking, but I do like typically like having some herbal tea and then also meditating a little before interviews. And then as far as social settings go, especially early on, I loved bringing like a little kombucha or just like some fun little drink. So it's like, I have something cool to sip on too. But I don't know. At this point, I don't do as much of the cutesy drinks or cute little mocktails. I'll just have like some water, and that's really fun as well. And then in my day to day life, like I said, like the healing, it's definitely outside of the whole bubble of just like when I typically be drinking. So kind of a new habit I've implemented within the past few months more so is it's called morning pages. It's this concept through this book called The Artist Way, but basically early in the morning you want to write 3 pages, kind of like stream of consciousness style, and just get everything that's living up here on paper. And I think that's been a great way for me to reflect on my day to day life and behaviors, like while I'm on this healing journey of sorts, and just getting more in touch with my emotions and how I've been feeling. So that's that's like one of my favorite habits that I have. And this year in particular, and I think it definitely goes a bit hand in hand with not drinking as well. Um, I've definitely just started to emphasize more on my physical health and just going on runs more. Running's kind of like my activity of choice, but just like making healthier decisions for my body. And then also early in the year, I started going to therapy more regularly and just being able to talk about my relationship with alcohol and anxiety and everything in that setting was so helpful. Um, so yeah, those are the main habits of sorts. And also, all that being said, it's like there's definitely bad habits in my life right now. One of my least favorite habits I do is right when I wake up, I like grab my phone, shut off my alarm, and then instantly scroll Instagram, Twitter or X or whatever you call it, just all the social media. And it's just like so draining. So there's still lots of things to work on, and that keeps it um, fun in the journey because I mean, I don't think it ever will like be at a point where I'm just like, ah, yes, I am healed now and life is good. Like, I think I'll always be trying to work towards something and just learning more about myself and making adjustments, which is a fun way to look at it. Oh, and I also wanted to note this kind of goes back to the resource question as well. But for myself, I love little like milestones of sorts. So I have this app called I Am Sober, and it keeps track of um, like the number of months and days that I've been sober. And the really cool thing about it is you're kind of able to reflect like on your own journey after hitting a month. It's like, this is how I'm feeling. These are the benefits I've noticed for myself. So I think that's been a really cool tool for me to use because if I am feeling a bit discouraged one day or just like wanting to reflect on my progress, I think that's a super useful way to like keep it going. Because for me, when I was starting off the year, like I'm not drinking, I'm like, a year is so long. Like I've done months with no alcohol. Like I've done that quite a bit in my past. But the reason I wanted to do a year was because it sounded a bit scary to me. So I'm like, if it sounds scary, it's probably a good thing to do. Um, and I mean, it's already 9 months into the year, and um, I it scares me a lot. Like I won't label it as like, oh, this is a forever thing and I'll never ever drink again. But that being said, when I started the journey back in December, I just expected, oh, 2024, I'll be drinking again. I'll be healed and life will be okay. But where I am right now, and a lot of that is just looking at sobriety and my journey, not as the punishment, but as an opportunity. I think I'll definitely be continuing it like through 2024, and I'll keep growing and see where life takes me.
That's awesome. Yeah, really appreciate you providing that insight and those habits. So related to that, actually, I have a question. Do you feel like you've replaced the bad habit of drinking alcohol with anything else? Do you feel like that has something else has taken its place, or do you feel that when you reflect on the decision to create new habits in replacement of alcohol, you haven't replaced it with anything else that could be detrimental?
Oh, just to clarify, do you mean have I replaced it with like still what I'd consider bad habits or just like habits of any
Yeah.
form?
Do you feel like you've there's a word for it. Do you feel like you've displaced your behavior towards alcohol towards something else, another bad habit,
Mm.
or looking back at it, you feel like there was a clean break, and um, that that habit hasn't been replaced by anything else, or that like dopamine hit isn't coming from somewhere else?
Yeah, great question. I think early on in my journey, and I've read that this is a fairly normal situation, but I think I was definitely consuming more sugar when I wasn't consuming alcohol because it's a substance of some form and it's very easily available. And it would like have that dopamine hit in a way. So I think that's just a common experience that people who are quitting alcohol, like, that does tend to happen. So I've noticed that for like a short amount, but I definitely still consume sugar, but at more of a level it was at before. And in general, being able to reflect on my relationship with alcohol and really my relationship to addiction, it certainly goes beyond just like one substance, I've noticed for myself. And so, yeah, I'd say, like I mentioned, like scrolling on my phone, social media, that's one that I still struggle with. Um, like this is a very broad one, but just like addiction to control of sorts and um, like I don't know how to properly say it, but just like getting in my head for situations that I don't have control over, that's something that I see myself leaning back on sometimes. And if I didn't really question my relationship with alcohol, I don't think I would have noticed that side as much. So there's definitely certain habits that I'm recognizing. Um, I feel like this, these past 9 months or so, I've definitely kind of been focusing more. So I'm just like, okay, like just abstaining from alcohol has been the focus. But really, as I look to the months ahead in the new year, I do really want to start like questioning and taking action on these other negative habits in my life. And another goal as well, and something we kind of touched on, but I'd love to kind of build up or get connected to um, more of a community that is focused um, on sobriety or just more wellness and healing in general. Just feeling like I have more support in like with people who are going through similar situations of sorts. Whereas I feel like the past 9 months, um, a lot of it has been like a very kind of more internal journey of self-reflection. I'd love like looking ahead to create more community around it.
Okay. And this community like would be more like sharing how would you envision this community?
Yeah, I think of it as something that would be more kind of hyper local. So I'm based in the Pittsburgh area, and there are existing Facebook groups and stuff I've seen. I just haven't been actively participating in it because I kind of felt still early on. I'm like, I will figure this out, like more so on my own. But now, just where I'm at in my journey, seeking out different local resources like that of people who are sober or sober curious. And it's a really cool time to be sober right now because like one brewery, like a 15-minute walk from my place, now they're starting up these events where the first Monday of every month, like they're just focusing on non-alcoholic drinks. And so there's definitely lots of opportunity within Pittsburgh, and we're not this huge city, but to connect with people who do have like some sort of interest or connection to sobriety. So yeah, in general, I mean, of course, with my entrepreneurial spirit, maybe sometime I would want to form my own group of some form. Especially selfishly, I'd love like more focused on 20-year-olds since I'm in my 20s, and I think it is a little bit harder to find people in that age range to connect with. So we'll see what happens there. But for now, I'm just like joining kind of existing local groups.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really want to like add on that a little bit. I think building a community is really empowering, and I think that's like what we're trying to do here on the podcast as well. So I think that's why it was like a great fit for you to be on here. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to unite people or build a community around people who feel kind of like socially outcast. I know, on your journey, I'm sure there was like moments where you felt pretty lonely trying to be sober, and I mean, like trying to build a community around that group of people is, I think, a really awesome way to take that feeling you have of like loneliness or like to feel like outcast from other people and turn that into like a strength or turn that into like something. Okay, hey, we can be united by this thing that we believe betters our lives and also um, can help other people who are going through their own problems. So turning that like loneliness you feel and turning that loneliness that you have into something that you can use to empower yourself and others. And yeah, so um, I have another question about the rise. I think like we should do one more question maybe, and then like start transitioning on like a reflecting final thoughts perspective. So my final question is, um, what advice would you give to someone who's like going through um, the similar like journey of sobriety and has thoughts of like continuing to drink alcohol? They have like that peer pressure from outside. What do you say about like handling that peer pressure or handling that like environment that you're in that kind of like promotes and continues to um yeah, it continues to promote and like I guess bring to light the positives, quote unquote positives of drinking.
Yeah, I think, um, yeah, really based on my own experience, I think I would just recommend the person starting their new journey with it, um, being able to just reflect upon their own past experiences with alcohol and really be able to state, like, why am I making this choice? And for me, back in December of last year, it was really powerful. And actually, it was through the I Am Sober app as well. But I wrote down, I want to be more confident in who I am substance free. And so just kind of having that mantra of sorts to remind me of why I'm doing this journey was super important. And I think every reason will vary from person to person, and it's a very personal journey. But just understanding why you're making the decision and why making this decision will ultimately be of benefit for you. And I think as far as peer pressure goes, it's tough because I said even in my early days of not drinking, the thoughts are running through my head like, that looks kind of nice. So I think just recognizing that it's not just a light switch where immediately you won't have these thoughts. Like it's a learning process of sorts. And to just understand it will just take a few hurdles, but like the first month, the first time you do something, the first time of trying anything, like that is the hard part. But the more that you reinforce these new habits, it just becomes easier and easier. I think I'd recommend that they do look at healing options just outside of just the decision to quit, like look into journaling and therapy and really like building this strong support system for yourself. Um, and yeah, I think um, I just want to tell them that it's a beautiful thing that they're even considering it. And it is tricky in this society. It is so normalized to have a beer at the sports game and drink a little cocktail at the networking event. Like, it really is everywhere. So, really, just taking the first step of even recognizing that it's a potential problem of sorts or something that is getting in the way of your life in some form. That's really great that you're even just taking the time to recognize it. Um, and that self-reflection that you're using, that's like that is your superpower and that will get you through the hard times.
And I feel like every challenge that we have is a way like to really understand more about ourselves. I feel like your understanding that you are kind of that for you being comfortable in a social context is very important, and also the idea of like of really be able like to be at ease with people in general um really is what mattered and what made you hope that in a external tool you are finding this strength. And so like you said, like bringing the awareness on that and try to achieve this goal, this dream, without any external help but just relying on yourself. It's a very self-empowering journey, and so we're very happy to have heard about it. And the last point I want to touch with you, Emily, is the fact that, I mean, I don't know you since years. I just met you at training camp and I met you at Redux. And so these two moments, like July 2022, July 2023. So just these two touch points. And then basically I'm out of your life, Emily. I don't know what you do day to day. Um, so hopefully you're giving up with good habits. But a part of jokes, that was of course not funny. Uh, but what I would like to ask is, so I feel that you build a lot of self confidence. I think you completely are independent of external factor that validates you. And so, for example, my feeling is that you felt validated by the fact you had a job in July 2022, and instead now your self confidence, self validation enabled you to take a leap of faith. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so through the Venture for America Fellowship Program, I joined a company in August of 2022. And very early on, I felt that it was not a fit for me. And months later, and my sobriety journey was a huge part of it because I started to gain confidence in myself and my ability to make decisions and just this sort of integrity where I had a better sense of what I wanted out of my life, um, and in a way, what I deserved. So, in late July of 2023, I put in my 2 week notice at my company. I did not have a job lined up. I would tell people back then, I'm like, ideally, I would have loved to have something lined up. That would have been great.
But that would not be a leap of faith.
But
So
I
like
felt
leap of faith is like pursuing.
right. Leap leaps of faith are fun, and there's just something so freeing about leaping off and just knowing that a net will eventually appear of some form. So Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as one of my most rational decisions of sorts, but I am proud of myself that I was able to have the confidence in myself that this role isn't right for me. There's something better for me. And I can make the conscious choice to move on to something better. And I'm still looking for something better. So if anyone's hiring, let me know.
Yep, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I guess I wanted to like a little bit ask another question. I know we said last question, but I want to ask another question on that. Do you feel like the confidence you gained from being able to be sober and your sobriety journey has kind of culminated in that leap of faith? And like, are they intertwined? Do you think?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, it definitely led me to be able to make the decision for myself for my job. And even looking outside of my job, I've just been able to have more challenging conversations with people in my life, set boundaries when I need to, and really ask for the things that I want in a way that it was very challenging for me to do before. And it's still a journey I'm on as well, but I just see that throughout my sobriety journey. And I mentioned early on, it's very much not linear. Um, and everything is a bit wavy and there are good days and bad days. But overall, when I look at myself, like who I am today versus who I was early December of last year, um, there are just so many amazing changes. So I'm so grateful, and I'm also so grateful that I'm still in a place where I am learning and growing and just becoming more confident for the future.
And I think like you are very
Yeah,
confident.
that's
So
awesome.
thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, yeah, you
Thank
were the
you.
even on this podcast and even on the stage, you're always shining. So thank you so much.
Thank you both, my shining stars, my sparkling stars.
You're sparkling. My bad. You're sparkling. My bad. We can't be switching up on the adjectives.
Okay, Ron, now it's time to showcase your I don't know if to call it pervert mind or I don't know which are better adjectives, but kind of
My
not
what?
pervert.
What?
Your
Yo,
What section are
your
we going to?
not
yo, yo,
pervert.
yo,
I'm saying
yo, yo. I am not a
don't.
pervert. I am not a pervert. Please do not put that out there. That is so weird.
No,
What the hell? Where did that come from? Like I was literally chilling, and
no,
then this man
no,
just.
like the question. I don't know, like some weird questions. You're joking.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I they're not perverted questions. They are zany. They are
What
zany
means zany? Let
questions.
me find the adjective.
Um,
Zany. Let's find a good transaction.
they're
Zany.
basically it's just like some more stuff to for people to get to know you and less, such a intense conversation. I think this is really really awesome and insightful that going through that journey and kind of breaking down your rise and your fall. But yeah, just like things for people to get to know you a little bit better and just more lighthearted stuff. I think this will help employers even know your your personality, how you could be the I don't know the shining star of any podcast, any employee room. I don't know. So I guess in your so I guess a little bit of background. We like have guests kind of give us a little bit of background information about them so we can kind of dig into their rise and their fall story and kind of know them a little bit better. So in your form, you kind of filled out that you're super um, interested in uh, Celtic tap dancing. How did you like get into that? How did you start practicing? How do you start dancing? What's going on with that?
Whoa, that's a great question. I totally forgot. Like, I feel like I filled out the form so long ago that I'm like,
Please don't regret.
what are you gonna say? Um,
We have so much
Celtic tap
information on you.
dancing.
We know more about you than you do, Emily.
I started taking dance lessons at the Maine Dance Academy. I'm from Maine. So I started dance lessons when I was 2 years old. But it was a few years after that until I was granted the opportunity to Celtic tap dance. And I'm not sure how much you two know about Celtic tap dancing, but the way I would describe it is your upper body and your arms are like completely stiff and still most of the time, and then your little feet do all the like Celtic jumpy tap dancing while I'm wearing little tappity tap shoes. So, so honestly, Celtic tap dancing, it wasn't even my favorite genre of dance of sorts. I preferred ballet
Damn,
and
Emily's
other
elitist
things.
dancing, elitist
But
dancing
I did
preferences.
but I did partake in Irish Celtic dancing, and if I had a pair of tap shoes right now,
We
I
don't
would
need
totally show
the
you. But I
professional
guess
dancer. We
that will
just
be
need like
for.
an example. Yeah,
You want to see a
of course.
We'll
move?
put some B-roll. Davide, you love B-roll, right? We'll put some
Yeah.
B-roll.
I'll send you over a clip of me for B-roll.
Oh, dude, that would be sick. That would be awesome.
Okay.
We'll just put that at the beginning. We'll just put that for you. Like whenever you're talking, just have that on. You're like, and then you're talking about your very serious journey, and then you're just doing stands the entire time. We'll just play it on loop just the entire time.
Perfect.
We had like a fourth box, so
Perfect.
with Emily dancing like.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Actually, I just wanted to ask about it because I'm like so curious. Like, how does that come out? Like, yours your family Irish, and is that kind of like a custom or something? Or
No, so I had like two dance instructors of sorts. The one who taught me Celtic tap dancing, she was okay, she was Canadian, but I don't know if she had Irish background. I don't know how she knew it, but that's who I learned it from.
so just a bunch of people appropriating Celtic tap dance. This is now my culture.
Yeah, maybe we take this part out of the podcast.
No, that's perfect. That's pretty funny. Let's see. I have some other questions. The one hit wonder on SoundCloud. I want to know about that. What's the song? We're gonna have that as the intro for this podcast. So, what is the
Oh
song?
my gosh. I love it. Okay, so I am a one-hit wonder. I'm not a wonder, but I do have one song on SoundCloud. It is called Groundhog's Day, and it's about the best holiday in the world, which is Groundhog's Day. Both of you know what that is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No,
I don't know if he
no,
knows. Yeah. So Groundhog
no
Day.
clue.
Yeah, do you want to explain it?
Okay, Groundhog Day, it takes place on February 2nd. It's actually in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. So it's pretty close to Pittsburgh, actually. But they have this famous groundhog. His name is Punxsutawney Phil. But early in the morning, some group of men will hold him up, and if he sees his shadow, okay, I forget which is which, but either it's going to be a long winter or an early spring, depending on if he sees his shadow or not. So basically, in the cold winter months, you want it to be an early spring. So Phil will predict the weather, supposedly. But I believe it, actually. Um, that is the
Isn't he
concept of.
like pretty much not accurate at all? Like
Yeah. But I think it's so awesome. Like, I guess I need to look into the history of it more, but I just think it's so fun that we have this silly holiday that like shouldn't exist because it's not accurate.
Yeah,
It's
no.
not a real thing, but we do it every year.
Yeah, that's just being American. I don't know. Like it's so weird. I don't know. Like Thanksgiving, like that we just do that. Like I don't really know why. Like
Yeah.
like it's not even a religious thing. We're just like, hey guys, like you just get a couple days off in November. Just like do it, bro. Like just go for it.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Just
why?
do it.
Okay. But yeah, no, that's pretty. Groundhog Day is pretty interesting. I always thought of it as really, really weird that we have some sort of tradition like that, and it's like a very uniquely American thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pretty cool like concept, Davide. If you want to learn about more about it, there's like a I guess you won't really learn about it, but you'll be able to see it. Um, there's a movie called Groundhog Day, a really famous
Groundhog
movie.
Day. Groundhog
Yeah, it's a really famous movie. Highly recommend watching
Day.
it. It's a really really funny, good movie. Was it Bill Murray? Yeah, Bill Murray's the star.
Yeah.
So if you want to like really get into American cinema, I think that's definitely something you should definitely watch.
But it
If you want to understand the concept of Groundhog
Yeah,
Day,
yeah, you'll learn about
the top
that,
tilt.
and
Yeah.
you also like I think that was one of the first like that was one of the first movies where they kind of did the time loop thing. Like I haven't seen
Mhm.
anything like the time loop thing be a thing before that, right?
Yeah, no, I think it was one of the first. I love time loop movies.
what's time loop? What's
But
time
yeah,
loop mean?
anyway,
I'm
on
a,
that,
it's like where you die and then you start the day all over again, or you don't have to die, but I guess like basically you like the main character like goes through the same day every day throughout the
Mm,
movie. Like even if they go to sleep, they wake up and it's the same day that they relive again and again. And I guess like they're trying to figure out how to live their lives better. Like there's some sort of like overarching message about
so
the
it's a movie
movie.
that repeats over and over, kind of a deja vu.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, like
Mhm.
the main character is the only one that remembers going through that
Okay.
day. Everybody else thinks that it's a new day, but like the main character is the only one person who like lived that day, and then they wake up again. And they're like, "I've lived this exact day. Like, what's going on?" And so they like end up trying to like they end up having some overarching theme where like they learn about how to be a better person
Mhm.
or some shit like that. But like at the end of the day, it's like at the end of the day, it's just like you the main character relives the
I've
day.
seen a movie like that.
So Groundhog Day is
I've seen a
about
movie
that.
like that. I don't know if you want to know the title, but
Basically, I wrote lyrics to a song. I really don't have much of a musical background. I played flute growing up, but I don't know how to play guitar or piano or anything useful. But I wrote lyrics to this song called Groundhog's Day. And I'm like, these are such beautiful lyrics. I need to give it out to the world. So there was this kid, this man named Lane who lived on my floor in college, and I knew that he made and produced music. So I didn't know him super well, but I was like, hey, you make music. Can you help me? And basically, I would just sing my little song that I had the lyrics written out, and then he'd add the instrumental, the guitar, and like produce the whole song. So really, it's Lane's song, but I wrote the lyrics. But then I put it on my SoundCloud. Um, it's this very beautiful acoustic ballad of sorts, and you should check it out. It came out in like 2019, but it's still a banger.
Hell yeah! How many listens does it have?
Not a lot, probably like 200.
Hey, that's good. That's more watchers than this podcast has. So we're gonna
Perfect.
ride the train. We're gonna gather all of your listeners, and they'll be podcast episode watchers now.
Perfect.
But that's awesome. That's pretty cool. I don't know. I've never produced a song. I've never thought about that. So that's really awesome. I saw that. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I wanted to hear more about that.
Yeah.
All right. So that's been I don't know the question corner. I don't know. We're gonna create some sort of segment for that. But thank you so much, Emily, for joining us. Really, really appreciate you coming out on the pod. And it was really awesome to hear your fall and your rise story. And it's really awesome to connect with a friend. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. And really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you both so much. This was such a fun and just enlightening experience for me to reflect on my own journey more. And you two shining stars are a part of my whole Redux and like reflection story as well. So thanks for having me. And
Yeah.
yeah, this is
Just
great.
need the correction that we're sparkling.
Oh,
We're
sparkling.
sparkling. We're not shining stars. We can't be switching up the metaphors. We can't. What are we if we don't stick to our metaphors?
Thank you so much,
Right.
Emily. It was fun to be serious for once with you and talk about this such a common topic for lots of people. I mean, I think everyone related to alcohol in a way was kind of uh, a moment of like disconnection. In Rohan's case, was a moment of like trying to keep up with some commitments that he had, and Rohan kind of did it and put whatever he wants. Uh, and with okay, thank you so much, Emily, for being on the pod.
I don't know what that was, bro, but that was crazy,
It was
dude.
a pleasure, Emily. It was it's always,
This man turned in like the ending. All he had to do was be like, "Thank you, Emily, for being on the pod. Like, we really appreciate you coming out." And then he turned it into, "Oh, Rohan, why can't you be personally accountable, bro?" I was like, "Okay, man."